great. So, welcome everyone to this second talk from the Tech Leads venue. We want to introduce everyone to Chris Miller, the engineering manager of SATPA, one of GAP projects, and he very kindly, sorry, took some time to share with us his experience. Chris, it's been in the industry around 25, 27 years. He's a self-taught software developer, which is amazing, right? And have worked on every technical position in the company uh, throughout his lengthy 5-year tenure at SATBA. And now he managed three of the engineering teams, including the high velocity support team, uh, sounds amazing, really amazing. So, everyone, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or use the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and Chris will too. And we'll also have some space for questions at the end. And nothing else to say. Chris, the station is yours. Welcome to the Techlist venue, and thanks a lot for sharing with us.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure. You made that sound a lot more interesting than I think it really is, but I'm looking forward to it. So let me give you a little bit of background about myself. Hey, I'm Chris Miller. I'm an engineering manager. But as Daniel had pointed out, I've been in the industry for 27 years. I was a 17-year-old kid sitting in front of a computer with a book that once upon a time said, I think I want to learn how to write some, applications or websites or code or something. And I just kind of went down the rabbit hole and ended up a software developer. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, California, got to watch all of the really cool companies kind of all pop up with all the strange names. And I told every single one of them, no, I don't want to work for your company. You've got a weird name like Google or Yahoo or Amazon. Why would I want to work for a company like that? That turned out to be a bad idea, but it was fun. I got to learn a lot and worked through, a bunch of different jobs, a bunch of different companies, tried to make it on my own a little bit here and there. Moderate success throughout the time, but it was entertaining. It was educational. Got to learn a lot about it. As I, continued to grow, I've worked lots of different jobs for lots of different companies, doing everything tech related, from development to design to DevOps, networking, DNS, working in co-location facilities. It was a lot of fun. I won't bore you with all those details. Those are fun stories for a different time. But how I ended up at SOTVA was in 2017, I had gone back to California to help my family with some health problems that they were having, and was just looking around trying to find a job, and really just was drawn to what SOTVA was. It also helped that I had a friend that worked here. A lot of you know Meredith. So I had worked with her at a previous company, and said, why don't I give them a call, see what's going on? And sure enough, I showed up. I don't even really remember the interview process. It all happened so quickly. I flew in, did the interview, flew back out. And, next thing I know, I had been given a nice offer to come and join the company. And it's just past my 5-year period. I think March was 5 years. So I guess it's going a little more than just past, but it was quite a bit of fun. When I first started at SOTVA, I was brought on to be a front-end developer. So I did some design and was working on some of the front-end websites and, doing a bit of that. We ended up then very quickly being transitioned over, needed to be a back-end developer to work on the Carry application. We had just purchased it from the guy that had originally written the thing. And so me and one other guy went out and became the first back-end team at SOTVA, which was very interesting. None of us knew anything about Ruby or anything about the application. We just kind of had to learn. We worked on it as we, went through the process. It was new and different. Shortly after that, we kind of worked our way into Magento, and the team sort of started growing. We ended up with a couple extras, and some other stuff happened. One of the fun things is every quarter we would sit down and we would kind of schedule who was going to be on call during that time, who was on red team. And it was really interesting. Everybody else on the team is like, I'm not it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be on call. I like my stuff. And I'm sitting there in the back, and I just like, nope, give it to me. I'll do it. I'll do it all the time, forever. I mean, most of you know this probably, because I think some of you were around while we were still kind of going through that. And I was the guy that just wanted. I liked it. I enjoyed doing it. It was fun. I've always enjoyed puzzles growing up, trying to figure out something. And the way I look at bugs, especially that kind of stuff, is it's a puzzle. How can you figure out why something is not working the way that it's supposed to, and why did it change? What's there? It's a puzzle. So I always wanted to be on red team, and in all reality, it was quiet. Um, so it was quiet most of the time. We had a few larger issues, but nothing terribly drastic by any means. So I would just notoriously be on it. And I think eventually management finally got sick of me being the guy going, give it to me all the time. And I said, well, guess what? Now you get to be there all the time. It's yours. Go. Run forward. So I was the lead of that team for quite a while, which was fun, much to my wife's dismay. She didn't really care for that very much, but it was okay. It wasn't too bad. Especially because it was right around COVID that everything was happening. We were all locked in our house. We couldn't go anywhere anyway. So why not be useful and be on call? So that was a lot of fun. And over time, it just kind of made sense. I'd been talking to the boss and said, hey, I want to be a manager. I've been doing this for long enough. I think I get it. Let's talk. So I slowly matriculated into that position, and they said, sure, go. So then I was given the management of the support team and of one of the kind of analytics. We call them digital tools teams. They manage Google Analytics and our Google Tag Manager implementations. They're pseudo developers. They know a little bit of code. They know a little bit how to get down and dirty, but they ask for a bit of help. So it was good having somebody like me that was able to kind of help them through the process and understand some of what they were doing. And then I was given the management of the Magento team, the back-end order management system team, which was a lot of fun. It was really interesting because that was the team that I had come from originally. I had started out on, and I kind of came full circle back around to it. When I thought I was finally done with Magento, they said, hey, guess what? And I gave it back. So that was kind of entertaining. And it's a great team of guys that we've put together, of people, developers that we've put together on this. They're very, very strong at what they do. And, frankly, I'm just riding around on their shoulders. They're excellent group of developers that work on this stuff for us. So that's the majority of what I actually do on a day-to-day basis. So what exactly did I do that helped me get that position? How did I go from just being a software developer to that did a little bit of everything all the way up through there? Well, I had to gain the confidence of the company. I had to gain the confidence of the managers. I had to get all of the people involved that knew what was going on to understand, that I knew what I was talking about, that I knew they could trust me out of the gate. So the number one piece of that I learned is communication, right? That communication is by far one of the strongest things you have to have as a manager. So I made a point to identify things, issues that were coming into production support or red team, however you want to call it, that were highly visible, that a lot of people knew about, that were, large bugs that were affecting people that, a lot of people would see it. And I would make sure that those highly visible issues would get extra communication from them, right? So when we're dealing with things like, the website's down, we're having a problem with it, we're having an issue with the card, people aren't able to check out, we can't get, take transactions from people. That's a highly visible issue. Whereas maybe something in the back end where, hey, you misspelled the name of that SKU, or a number's off a little bit, or something on those sides, the coupon isn't applying to this order when we're trying to revise it, stuff along those lines. Those are not quite as visible on it. So I would make a very good point of going through and trying to kind of overemphasize some of the stuff around communication. It was great. It almost verged on oversharing, but being strong in that regard is exceptionally beneficial. The next piece into this is decisiveness. So I always made a point. I tried very hard to work smart, not sit around deliberating on how to do things all the time. I've seen too many people sit around and worry about What's the right way to approach this? What's the right way to handle this problem? How do I need to attack it? But you can sit around and argue with yourself or somebody else forever. It's much better, I've found, to just act. If you don't know what direction to move, just start working in one of them. You'll pretty quickly figure out what it is, which one, whether it was right or not, right? And sometimes just any action is better than inaction and worrying about it, right? And it shows other people that you're willing to take a risk, you're willing to try. Eventually, over time, the things that you're concerned about, you learn more, you get more, you understand it a little bit better, you're able to talk more effectively about the problems at hand so that you can make those decisions even better, even more quickly, kind of thing. And that very quickly would, that made people understand and trust me that I at least, bias toward action is one of the things that I like to say. And they would understand that that's good. That's how you want somebody in one of these teams. Somebody that can make a decision when it's hard to make one, kind of thing. The next piece is availability. Now that's the part that I was telling you my wife really didn't care for, but I made it a point to be available whenever I could, whenever I was needed, whether I was at home sitting on the couch, riding in the car somewhere, taking a bath with a nice glass of wine, something, didn't matter. It get a message and I'm not really doing anything important. I'd, pull out my phone and start talking about it. Turns out that, the perception of action is almost as good as the action itself, right? As long as people believe that there's somebody listening, as long as you're reacting to them, because I was listening. I was absolutely being able to react and respond to them in a timely manner. They would be, it was great. They were happy about that. Just the regular conversation of things that were happening, just talking through it, saying, hey, I got this. We're looking into it. We're working on it. Even if I didn't know what the answer was, just, hey, I'm getting there. Just talking about it. The perception that it was happening was great. I just made it a point to myself, and I still kind of do, can't work my way out of it, I would try to respond in about 5 minutes, within 5 minutes, less if I can. And I usually did. Drove everybody else on the team nuts, right? Because they're like, well, now you've set the bar. You've told everybody else what it's supposed to be. But I did it, and I still do. It's kind of fun. For me, at least, I like seeing what's going on, how things are working out. Honesty, that was another key point, right? If you don't know something, don't lie. Don't make it up. Don't just flub around on it. Tell the truth. Just be like, hey, I need to go figure it out. I need a minute. I need to go investigate a little bit more. I need to go sort something out. That happens a lot, right? And giving people the understanding of, hey, we need to look into this a little bit more. Hey, we're in the process. We just can't figure it out. That's okay. But it's just that leads back to communication and honesty, right? Talk to people, tell them what's up. If management knew that I would always tell them the truth, they would always come to me for answers. Even if I wasn't the one that was like in charge of or dealing with that issue specifically. Hey, can you get to the bottom of this? Can you run it out? One of the parts of my job is we run a blameless postmortem. There's lots of names for this, but it's basically in the event that we have an incident, we have to go through and figure out all the details of exactly why it happened, how it happened, and how to prevent it in the future. The blameless part is, unfortunately, that would usually point at somebody saying something broke. I would never point a finger. I'm absolutely not one to do that. But it was neat going through and figuring out all the details. And they know that I wouldn't sugarcoat things. So that comes from being honest. That's a very, very good skill to have. And then the fun part is understanding business priority. Now, this one, I'll tell you the truth, my boss told me that I need to put this in there. So I'm trying to kind of lend a little credence to it. But it does make some sense, right? The idea that I have to self-prioritize, or I have to now prioritize for my team the issues that come in. How did I go about doing it? With each company, it's a little bit different. You have to kind of figure out what's important to the company, what makes the company tick, which are the things that prevent the company from doing business. And that only comes with time and experience. The good news with Sattva is it's pretty easy. Can we still take orders and receive money from people? Is the customer affected? Are they having a problem? Are they getting a negative experience? Or, has this affected any kind of upper management? Meaning, has anybody with a C in front of their title complained about it? If they have, then, that's urgent. Then all hands on deck. I start calling people. Well, luckily for most of you GAP people, I don't get the opportunity to call you because international calls are expensive on my phone. And, I respect your nights and weekends kind of thing. I think Fernando lives close enough to the border. I might be able to get a US phone over to him so he could call me. I could call him and wake him up. But I have on occasion woke people up in the middle of the night because something like that has happened. But for the most part, if it doesn't fall into those categories, then the rest of it just goes down the normal path of figuring out priority, right? Is how big of an issue is this? What does it affect? Do we need to kind of push through it more, just work it normally out of the gate? So, we're kind of, that is a very good thing to be able to do, right? To be able to react on the fly, that's something that's beneficial. So now we kind of lean into, how did I go from being a developer, being this, into management? And what made me think that I was ready to do this, right? One of the big pieces that not a lot of people talk about is that, my job is a lot of talking, right? It's less, there was a time when I was hands-on coding all the time. I would try my darndest to stay out of meetings and do everything else. This job is the polar opposite. I'm talking more than anything else, right? From having meetings and planning things for the future to mentoring other developers to helping solve problems. I don't have as many hands on keyboard anymore. And when I do, my team likes to yell at me and tell me to get out of there. I'm doing it wrong. Especially Jeff. Jules seems to like my opinion, so that one works out. So that works fairly well. But so being able to talk and being a people person, right? I like people. I genuinely try to be invested in the people that I work with, whether they're my direct reports, whether they're just coworkers that I have. I really try to. I think it makes a difference. Once you have a relationship with people, that's a great thing to be able to have. It's being able to build that relationship that matters. Nobody wants to talk to people that are hard to talk to, that aren't, it's complicated, right? It's when you can't have a conversation honestly with somebody, then it's hard to open up and kind of go down that. But I always thought I was pretty good at it. Or everybody was just lying to me, and that was, a possibility as well. But everybody opened up, so I assumed I was doing it. I was doing a good job. So I like that. The other part is as I worked through all of the things, understanding the business priority and the decisiveness and the honesty, and with Red Team, because we would have a rotating schedule, I got to know everybody. I knew where everything was. I knew where all of the applications, who managed them, who did all of that. It made it really easy for the business to say, sure, go. You can do this stuff. You're clearly good at it. They liked my decision-making skills. So I kind of worked into it. It was great. Now, what's the most interesting part about this is being a manager really isn't that much different than being a developer. That's an interesting point to kind of lean into, but if you think about it, it's really not. You've got a lot of the same skills, right? You're still working with the code, you're working with the people, you're working with the problems, you're just not writing it, right? You're kind of trying to help the others navigate their path down that direction. It's an interesting kind of direction to take, but that's the way that I went. I always enjoyed that part. So management as a whole is kind of a combination of a number of things, of all of the things that I'd kind of gone through above. The communication gets accelerated. I've got a lot more one-on-ones and stand-ups and regular check-ins with the teams, even not my own teams, right? I work with a lot of them, a lot of just people in general, just check in, see how things are going, go bug other people because there might be a problem with something they've written, something along those lines. Um, but identifying those patterns that you've got with who's doing well, and knowing when a team member is stuck and needs a push, or knowing when somebody needs a break, all that stuff leans into communication and personal skills, being able to have a relationship with them. It's tough, but getting to know your people are great. I don't know how much Jeffrey likes to share with me these days, though. That seems to work out. Another part that's really good about this is that failure is not always a problem. Something as a manager, something that, that's part of being on that production support team that I regularly had was, regardless of how much you know about an issue, you can never be right 100% of the time. I mean, I like to say that my teams have a 10% failure rate, but I give them up to 20 kind of thing. Everybody's going to have a problem. Everybody's going to fail. I had one where it wasn't early on. I was probably a year and a half in or so. I accidentally resent about 1,600 orders, their products again. So about 1,000 customers all got a duplicate product out of the whole thing. And, I remember the conversation with management. We figured out real quickly that it was probably cheaper to just write it off than it was to try to figure it all out from there. And I sat down, management brought me into the room, and I was convinced I was going to get fired. And they sat me in the room and said, "All right, what happened?" Explained it to him. He said, "Okay, did you learn something?" And I said, "Yes, I absolutely did." He said, "Okay, that's great. Are you going to do it again?" I said, No, definitely not. Now I've learned something. I'm not going to do it anymore." I said, "Okay, meeting over. See you later." And off I went. I said, I was a little in awe of that reaction, but it was great, right? It was kind of confidence boosting, because understanding that failure isn't really a failure, right? It's just an opportunity. It's a time that I go, "Hey, look, something broke. All right, now I need to go back and fix it again." It's a chance to, all right, I'm going to do this now the right way, maybe go back and do it a different way. And I'm going to put something in place, a guardrail or a guideline to prevent it from happening in the future. So hopefully somebody else doesn't have to make the same mistake that I did. And that's, an excellent thing to bring from the software development side, because the same thing applies when it comes to management. And back when I mentioned the part about, decisiveness, being decisive, picking a direction and going, the next piece is, pushing toward a direction, even if it isn't the most clear whether it's the right one or maybe it's the wrong one. You just kind of got to go. You just kind of have to start marching, especially when you don't know which one it is, right? Like I said, you can sit around and talk about a problem forever. You really got to just stop. At some point, you've got to kind of start working. You've got to do it, right? You got to keep moving. The only way you know if you're going the right direction or not is to kind of figure out that it's the wrong one at sometimes. Kind of thing. The idea again is you learn over time. You figure out what's the right direction, which one you know more, you learn more, you figure out how to pick the right answer a little bit better. And it does definitely get easier. Let's see. So the next piece that I have is learning how to guide people. And that's where you really get into a hard part, right? It's learning how to guide. I'm a developer. One of the hardest parts for me was I'm exceptionally opinionated about the things that I work on. I mean, very opinionated. I love getting into meetings and being like, "Hey guys, just do this, just do that," kind of thing. But you can't. As a manager, you can't do that. I always tell people that management that came from this kind of background is dangerous, just because of that, right? You always want to be prescriptive in how you do things. You want to tell everybody how to do it rather than let them figure out the right way to do it themselves. But when you're dealing with growth, right? And I'll get to more to that in a minute. But when you're dealing with growth with people, you have to let them choose. You have to let them figure out their own answers. You have to kind of set them up. The best thing that you can do is take the experiences that you have and just guide them. Don't be direct. Don't be telling them. Just kind of say, "Hey, maybe look over there. How about that?" kind of thing. Or let them try and figure out and come to you for assistance. I mean, that's probably one of the bigger parts out of it is, trying to direct and guide rather than just dictate how things need to be done. And then the other part there is career mentorship and coaching. Over there, you should look. Yes, exactly. Over there, I should look. The next part is, career mentorship and coaching. So this is a tough one because it's some people get. I have differing opinions from differing managers out of this, but I've always had success in this. Um, my goal with coaching somebody, with mentoring them, with figuring out where they, how to make them more effective is, understanding where your report wants to go with their career. And I always tell people, I don't even care if it's here. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, right? It's where do you want to be? I've had people tell me all sorts of different things. I don't even want to be doing this. I want to go do that instead. I'd rather be digging ditches. And I joke all the time that I'd rather go dig ditches than write code, just because you can't take the ditch home with you at night. I always had a problem with that. But it doesn't matter what direction somebody wants to go with their career. Even if it's not with this company, even if it's not with the position that they're in, you should always do what you can to help further their knowledge, right? Further the experience. I've had a couple of guys that were very staunchly back-end entrenched developers that have come and said, "Hey, I want to do front-end stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, you want to try some front end? All right, we can give you some front end." And the cool part now is that not only do I manage a back-end team, but I manage the production support team, and we get tickets of all kinds. So you want to do some front end here? Go pick that one. Go try that. Let's give you a little something. Or I can look into the roadmap in the future and say, "Hey, we've got a couple of things that we need to line up for these guys, for that we need to do that kind of fall in the category of something else." And kind of line it up for them, tee it up, make it easy for them to give it a swing and see what they think. I've had a couple of people come back and be like, "Yeah, that was a bad idea. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm happy where I am." So it kind of serves to either help promote them, keep them moving, or serves to, maybe not, tell them that what they're on, where they're at is the right place to be, sort of stuff. It's kind of fun. I enjoyed doing that. And it's up to the manager. It's up to me. It's up to the other managers out of this to make sure that what the developers need to stay engaged is happening, right? And the needs of the team are getting done and the company at the same time, right? But if the developers aren't happy, the team isn't functional, nothing's getting done the way that it should be, your agile velocities are all off, there's all sorts of problems that can arise from that. So you've got to line it up. I remember one of the more memorable moments that I used to have in my one-on-ones with my boss back in the day was he'd sit down and he always had where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? In 1 year, I want to be stronger at what I'm doing now. In 3 years, I want your job. It was kind of funny. Initially, he was a little like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But he started to learn that that was a good thing, because I was pushing him, and he had to be on his best behavior, as it was, because I was using him as a role model. And I was pushing him to be better, to be perfect. Can't be 100%, like I said, but to be better than that. And I think he took it pretty well. It was a lot of fun, and we worked together for quite a while and very well together out of the gate. It was sort of fun, and the company ended up getting dissolved. We got purchased and then dissolved into something else. And I think the part that was amusing was they ended up letting him go before they let me go. Well, it was severance. We were out of the whole gate. And I think he took that a little personally. I think I kind of took his job sort of at the end there. It was kind of fun. But it was quite a bit of fun. But sometimes career mentorship and coaching is easier than others. Things definitely don't happen overnight. You've got to be willing to play the long game. And but we're all back to communication and honesty are the same thing. All of my reports know, and frankly, probably anybody from the SOTMA side knows, I'm an open book. You want to know something, come ask me. I will tell you straight. Again, that's my honesty trait eking out there. I'm happy to give anybody my feedback and opinions as often as I can, and I think that makes me, a strong leader. Wow, I have blazed through my notes. So, you know, in conclusion to all this, um, the path to management is interesting. It's different for everybody. It's a little bit different. You have to know where you want to go. You have to understand what the company needs. And if this isn't the place that you want to be that, then you need to pick up as many skills as possible, right? It's know the people to talk to, know who to follow, who to look towards, who to, help mentor you, who to answer the questions. Um, Finding the managers that I wanted to kind of be like, that I wanted to model myself after, uh, being understanding how to be a little bit of everything. One of my maybe I wouldn't say it's a problem, but I've always been the kind of person that liked to know a little bit about everything. Right? I don't have to be the deepest one in why this one application works the way that it does, but I know who does, and I know enough about it to be able to kind of triage and look through and determine maybe what a problem is or signs that that's the case. And relationship building and knowing everybody that's involved, I can grab them and have a nice conversation, figure out where it is, get their help. And, it makes it a little bit easier to do that. So for me, it was just an obvious kind of progression over time to kind of move into it. Sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes you just have to go that direction and say that this is what you want to do and try to pick up those skills. But of them, I think I've kind of summarized the majority of the ones that are paramount to becoming, to being into that position. If you're a good communicator, you're a people person, you're good at making decisions and directing people, and you learn how to kind of pull yourself out of the daily stuff, which even I'm still not good at, still practicing. Um, you can kind of work into that fairly well. You can figure out the right way to present, yourself into a position and be, makes it real easy for people to say, hey, you're good at this. You're good at helping other people and working that way. How do we want to proceed? How do we put you in this position and give you more people? We like this. So, oh, all right, Jules, you got a question? What can I answer for you?
Yeah. Now that you say that it was obvious, would you say that those transitions were obvious in retrospect, or were they obvious in the moment?
So there's a little bit of both, right? I knew for a long time. So like I said, I've been in this industry for a very, very long time. And I knew a long time ago that one of the things that was good that I enjoyed doing was working with people, working regularly. And I knew that management was kind of the next step of that. So it was obvious to me, but I never really made it a point. I know that I went and told my boss, hey, I'd like to be a manager. I'd like to do that stuff. But, that things happened. They hired other people around on top of that position, and they liked me where I was. In fact, I kind of went in and wanted to be a manager right out of the gate when I was hired. And they said, that's great, but you're also a really good developer, and we want to keep you over there. Right? We can't lose you on this side. So it took a while. I kind of had to make my own path forward in some ways and manufacture that answer for them. So then it eventually did make sense. It was like, oh yeah, that is pretty easy kind of thing. So it was not obvious in the moment, but I kind of forced their hand to a degree.
Gotcha.
Sylvia, what do you got?
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm going to ask you a tough question.
All right.
What piece of advice will you provide to someone, because this is very common on engineering, right?
Sure.
To someone that got to a management role, not because they believe they were like initially people skills aligned to, but it's like a situation where how do I get there? Because probably that person is very good technically, and that was the main thing that put that person in there.
Yep.
And suddenly I'm having one-on-ones, not sure about like, am I really a people person or not?
Yep.
Exactly. How would you advise to manage that part?
So my advice to that one is you were given the position for a reason. The company believes in you. The people around you believe in you. If you were there purely on your technical merits, always try to improve your communication skills. Do things like this: sit up in front of people and have a conversation, talk more, but again, that's openness, honesty, decisiveness. Talk to your reports, talk to those people and ask. It's not uncommon for me to go to Jeffrey and Jules and Fernando and Derwin and them and say, hey, how am I doing? How do you think I'm doing? Ask them, see what their opinion is. What do you need? I try to make that as one of my regular topics of my one-on-ones. What do you need? What can I help you with? How can I help you get to the next level? Take that feedback to heart as well and do something with it. Just act on it. Actually try to, build yourself at the same time. But there's a term in the industry called imposter syndrome, and it's not just in this industry, but it's in a number of industries. It's kind of another term for just self-doubt is the case, and I had that for years. Right, I like I said, I made some maybe poor choice decisions by not being with Google and Yahoo and Amazon and all those companies, because I watched friends get jobs with them and retire at 35. Kind of thing. And I was sitting there in the background going, what have I done? Why have I done this? Why am I here? What have I done wrong? I'm clearly not, I shouldn't be the one in charge. I shouldn't be making decisions. But, we all kind of feel that at some point. The best thing that I tell myself on a regular basis is I go home at night and I sit down. Well, I shouldn't say I go home. I'm at home. I go downstairs at night and I, sit on the back deck and look out over the sunset. And I say, you know what? Today was a good day, but tomorrow's going to be better, right? I'm going to take something. And I always try to take at least one piece of advice, something that I've picked up, and I try to work on that. And I try to do it a little bit different. And every day I try something new, a little bit differently, and see how it goes. You get good experiences, you get bad experiences. And sometimes, that worked well, keep going. Other times it's, nope, that was miserable. Go drink it off, and tomorrow's a new day. You can try again.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I hope that answered your question. That was kind of long-winded.
Totally.
All right.
Totally.
Daniel, what do you got?
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I have a question, but just so everyone knows, we're now officially in the questions section. So
yes,
please go ahead and raise your hands and make any questions, or put it on chat. We can read them to Chris. I was thinking about your mindset about decisiveness, honesty, availability. How do you sell that to your team? Sell, quote unquote, right? How do you transfer your mindset to your team? Because sometimes new people come, they have a different idea of how things are done, right? It could be the guys above you or the people that you're leading, right? How do you share that with them and try to make them join your team?
So how do you instill the ideals that I have for myself out to the rest of them? Okay, so that's a tough question, right? And a lot of times that's relationship building. That's you've got to get your team to trust you. How do you get your team to trust you? Well, I kind of swam into it because I was a developer on the company beforehand, and I managed the support team. So they all knew that I already knew everybody, and it was an easy transition for me to kind of pick up on. But it's they have to learn to trust you. You have to get them to trust you and figure it out. And a lot of the ways that I would do that is, instead of posing it as you must do it this way, or this is how we need to go, I would ask questions, right? I'd be like, hey, so why is that better than maybe doing it this way? Can you explain to me? How about, can we just entertain this idea? Let's talk about this for a moment, kind of situation. Back to communication, right? It's because statements aren't always a statement. You can form a statement as a question, or a direction as a question, and try to, push in that direction. It's guiding, not dictating as well, right? So it's learning how to do that. And with me, it was always the sense that, with my team, because I knew the background of what they were working on, I kind of knew where to go look, and I would come and chime in, right? Some of the first interactions prior to me being the manager of this team, Jeffrey was on it, was, hey, let me come and help with a debug session. Let me sit around and let's talk about this kind of thing. And the more that they start to trust that you actually know what's going on, the easier it is for them to kind of follow suit with it. That's not to say that occasionally there isn't the because I said so moment, right? There's I'm your manager. That's just do it that direction. It's on me. And another piece of that kind of leans out in that direction is that the team needs to understand that you have their back, right? So if I make a bad decision, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, it was Fernando. It's his fault. He did it. Right? It's nope, it's me. It was 100% me. Well, this guy's name was on the work that was done. And I said, yep, but I told him to do it that way. That's on me. And the more that the team understands that you have their back, that you're protecting them, you're defending them, and then the more that they believe that you actually know what you're talking about, the easier those decisions take. But it all takes time. It all takes understanding, right? Hopefully that answered that one. I think Jeffrey was next, and then Jose. What do you got, Jeffrey?
Yep. I wanted to wrap all the things that you just said and connected with Daniel's question from an external perspective, right? From the perspective of somebody you actually manage. And I think the biggest way that you transmit your mindset to the team, at least as I have seen it, is lead by example, right? All the things that you said are things that we as your managers see every day. And I think that's super important to do as leads, right? One of the things you mentioned, for example, is like, okay, if you make a mistake, you can say, I made a mistake and learn from that. You have done that multiple times. And that takes away the fear from us to make mistakes, right? And that instigates us to be decisive, right? To make decisions. Not be afraid of failure, not being afraid and get stuck in there because this decision might lead to a problem or an issue, right? Everything in a responsible way, like having a backup plan if things goes out. But in general, I think seeing you do these things is what inspires us to do the same things, right? Seeing you coaching people and being open to others makes us go into with our managers and try to replicate that. So leading with example, I think is a key to transmit your mindset, right? If you say one thing and you do another thing, people will never believe you and people will never imitate you. So that's what I would say is like the most important thing if you want to transmit your way of work and your way of thinking to other people. And I have seen that in you.
Well, thank you. See, that's where the imposter syndrome or the self-doubt would show into play because I wouldn't have noticed that some of those things were there. I've tried to instill them, but occasionally I don't even believe myself at times. So that's kind of how that unfortunately folds out. But thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. So Jose, what do you got?
Hello. Hi, Chris. Nice to meet you. Great to talk. You seem like a hands-on manager. So I was wondering, how do you keep on top of the solutions that the team works on, and in particular when you, as you said, when you try not to prescribe the solution. My guess is that sometimes you end up on in a path you are not the expert on the tasks or the features or whatever the team is working on. Do you try to keep up to date with the technical aspects of that work? How do you work on delegating the actual work and the knowledge that it's generated or the solutions that the teams arrives to?
Okay. So I think there's kind of two questions there. So let me break them down a little bit real quick. So how do I stay on top of the solutions that are actually output from the stuff that we're working on with the team? One of the things that I try to do is I work very closely with our project manager, right? In the sense that all the tickets that get written, I have eyeballs on, I'm reading through them and seeing what's there. I'm helping formulate the acceptance criteria on the end result, right? If anybody doesn't know, acceptance criteria are the bullet points of things that have to be done in order to call this task completed. And I know that, with high velocity teams, I can't look at every single one of these. I can't sit there and PR everybody's lines of code or download and run the thing locally every single time. I can't. So what I try to do is instill the idea of think ahead. So as part of that is I know I'm not going to be able to test this. I can't figure it out. Maybe we need to get some automated testing. Maybe I need to have this person pair with a QA engineer at the end, have somebody else to kind of output it. And then I tell them, I want to see this. I want to see either a past test that has this steps in it, or I want to see this transaction or something attainable, right? I like to call that visibility, right? I've had a lot of devs in the past that have done things where they'll write code that they say just works, right? There's nothing that ever just works. You got to put log statements in. You got to put ways for us to be able to tell that it's working, right? A little green light in the corner that says, hey, look, it's doing it kind of thing. It's always beneficial to have that visibility. And if it's not there, then that makes it very complicated. But I rely on that a lot of times to tell me what's going on, to tell me that things are working right. Another kind of fun part about that I do take a little of this for granted is because I manage the red team, the production support team, that when something breaks, we're the first ones to hear about it anyway. So I get the opportunity to kind of rely on that team to help me go through and test. But I do try to make a point of making sure that I see all the tickets, and the ones that are the most high profile, that are the larger, more complicated issues, I try to follow through and test them back out and try to figure that part out. Now, what was that last part of your question that you had, Jose?
How do you try to keep up technically when you're not the one prescribing the solution for a technical issue?
Yes.
Do you even try to keep up to date with the technologies or the frameworks or the solutions that the developers bring to the project?
I do. Half of the reason that I have the teams put together the way that I have them put together is because I believe that they're smarter than I am. And as part of that, I rely on them to kind of help give me digested pieces of it. I make sure that our meetings are set up in such a manner that I can get kind of falling back and feedback on those. But yes, I do regularly pull the repos down and check things and look through them and try to see how they're going. And like I said, I occasionally stick my fingers in the water and I'll put up a PR and somebody will slap me around and be like, hey, knock it off. Stop it. Why are you doing this? Sort of stuff. But I try to stay on top of the industry as well as much as I can.
That's the fun part, right?
Yeah, it's fun. There's, there was an old saying back in the day that everybody would say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. You know what? It turns out that that's a lie. If you love what you do, eventually you end up having to do so much of it that you probably no longer love it anymore. And then you get kind of bored. So I've enjoyed the break, but I do still like to pull them down and tinker around and look at stuff. And, like I said, get my hands dirty every once in a while.
Cool. Thank you very much.
No problem. William.
Yeah, so great discussion and great ideas that you share. Like, I love the way that you keep in tracking what is going on in your team, like reviewing the ticket, like trying to see if it has the acceptance criteria, or trying to look for another ways to validate that this is working or is not working, like the logs and things like that, or the test, like that is like I think is pretty cool to we know that, but sometimes we forget in the doing things every day. But my question was not related with that, was related with what will be your advices for leads that are working in disruptive environments, where we know sometimes that we are going to cause problems with some changes, but we are in favor of innovate instead of keeping the things stable. Like we are trying to keep innovating and innovating, and we know that we are gonna break some things in the process. We have to be like really fast to to be aware of what is going on. Like as you said, um, what will be your advices? Because you said like sometimes those advices, you as a developer, you should be aware that you could be like tracking some log to see if something is working, to see if you break something. But as a lead, what are your advices to like try to transmit to your people in your team?
Sure. Okay. So hopefully my guys know this, but one of the things that I like to live by is move fast and break stuff loudly. Right? If you're going to if you know something's going to cause a problem, if you're knowing that that's going to be there, you need to share your vision, share the end result. Say this may cause a little waves over here, but over there it's going to be better, and here's why. Right? And you can kind of sell the vision, is what people like to call that. And then during that process, when you know you're going to fail, when you know something's probably going to break, when you've got some issues with that, just make sure that you have a way to know that it's not working the way that it's supposed to. And small incremental bits, as long as you pick off something nice and small, and if it's going to fail, it's going to fail loud, and you're going to know about it in a hurry, then oh, wait, hang on, let me go back and fix that, rather than one big lump and you have to spend forever trying to figure out where the problem ended up, right? Sort of thing. So it's sell the vision, make sure that everybody's aware of what the end destination is, where you're headed, why you're doing this way. Make sure people are aware of the pitfalls that might happen. Hey, here's where these things might go. Hey, we're working on this part of the project. These are the couple things that might break, so just keep an eye on them. And when, visibility in that code, make sure that it's very easy for people to be able to see, whether something's working the way that it's supposed to or it's not, so that they can pivot in a hurry. That's the best thing that I can say. So if you can instill those ideas in people, it might help direct them a little bit more. Did that answer your question, William? Okay, perfect.
To add a little bit on the answer you just said, I think I have a clear example, which was when we had all these super slow Magento deployments we had in the past with Jenkins and all that stuff, right? When we didn't have like the fast pace we have right now. And it was kind of disruptive, right? It stopped the customer service representatives to be stuck and could not work for a few minutes every day. And I think when you work in that kind of environment, planning ahead, as you mentioned, is key, right? Having some kind of schedule, letting people know when things are gonna go, like be down, they prepare themselves, right? That allows people to not hate your team always, because in any moment anything could break, right? Knowing that every Monday at 10 a.m. things are gonna be down, and for 30 minutes, 1 hour, lets them prepare for failure, let them prepare for problems. And eventually they get a rhythm out of that, even if it happens every week and you break stuff every week, as long as you do it at the same time. And, they, that helps them plan for that. And eventually you might have a solution. And of course, as Chris mentioned, right, some of the things to not have people get angry at you because you're breaking stuff is focus them on the value you're bringing, on the end goal, right? This is broken now, but in the future, you won't have to do this 3-hour process because it's going to be a 10-minute process, right? Things like that.
Yep, exactly. He couldn't have said it better. It's communication, visibility, vision, all of that stuff is just an excellent way to go that direction. So does anybody else?
Anybody else with further questions to Chris? Okay, I think that we're good, Chris. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate this talk, Chris. Was really interesting. And thank you, Gapsters. to join the session. Please stay tuned. Next week we have 2 more awesome talks. And again, Chris, thank you so very much for sharing the knowledge with us. We're really happy to have you here.
Anytime. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Have an excellent afternoon.
Bye bye.